Oh hey, it's after hours at Cinemassacre Video, and I'm putting in a little overtime to talk more movies. But first, a word from our sponsor. This video is sponsored by NetEase. Life After is a doomsday survival game available now for iOS, Android, and the PC. Join over 200 million players worldwide as you collect resources, build shelters, and fight off all the horrors the apocalypse has to offer. The zombie horror in this game is so intense, Capcom had to get in on the action. From August 27th to September 10th, Life After will be invaded by the Resident Evil series. There will be a special dungeon in the form of the Raccoon Police Department, and characters from the series will also show up as bosses. Get ready to take on the G-Stage 2, the Tyrant, the Executioner, and Nemesis. There will also be rewards waiting for you. Thanks to Life After, you'll have the immersive experience of Resident Evil right on your phone. There's even going to be special items like a zombie dog skin and outfits from classic characters like Leon S. Kennedy and an Ada Wong figurine which can be placed at players' home base. Rewards will be given for everyone who logs into the game with the new crossover. So click the link in the description and get Life After today. Flesh-eating zombies, brain-eating mutants, skinless dogs, and out-of-control artificial intelligence. Let's enter Paul W.S. Anderson's second video game adaptation. But beware, the residents of this movie are pure evil. It's Resident Evil.
Resident Evil. You're all going to die down here.
Resident Evil from 2002 is the first movie based on the Resident Evil games. Now, I'm not too well versed in Resident Evil lore, but I am somewhat familiar with the series. And Kieran really filled me in on a lot of stuff when we were doing the Resident Evil Survivor episode. So I'm going into this movie as more of an outsider. However, one thing I know about the games is that they drew a lot of inspiration from the movies of George Romero. To that point, they actually got George Romero to make a commercial for the game. For a while, he was even attached to the movie. His scripts were turned down, however, and they went with director Paul W.S. Anderson. He has a different reputation these days, but at the time, he seemed like a good choice. He did Mortal Kombat, which is still one of the better video game movies in my opinion, and Event Horizon was a decent horror movie, so I was excited to see his take on zombie horror. Strangely, the first big horror scene has nothing to do with zombies. Some person steals the T virus, but that's not enough. He also breaks a container and contaminates this whole building, which is actually an underground secret lab called the Hive. This triggers the lab's AI, which decides that the best way to stop the virus spreading is to kill everyone. This scene is actually pretty terrifying. The AI takes over the elevators and drops them stuffed with people. Elevators are pretty terrifying to begin with, and they're such a common thing. That's why I think there should be more elevator horror. Well, there was that movie Devil, but I don't know. My only complaint is that they shy away from the girl's head getting cut off. At first I thought maybe this was PG-13, like most video game movies, but then the next scene starts with nudity, as we see Milla Jovovich's character waking up naked after passing out in a shower. So this is rated R? Well, then where was the gore in the previous scene? Milla Jovovich's character, Alice, has amnesia and walks around this spooky mansion. It kind of resembles the first game, which starts in a mansion. Yeah, nothing says horror movie like old spooky mansions. Suddenly, a bunch of commandos show up and they immediately take a train to the underground lab. That's kind of a letdown though. I want to see the mansion. The commandos take Alice and some cop to the lockdown lab to shut down the AI known as Red Queen. Wait, Alice, Red Queen, and a character who's keeping track of time? Huh. Yeah, there's a weird Alice in Wonderland theme going on here. Apparently, the story and characters were going to kind of follow Lewis Carroll's story a little closer, but the idea was dropped somewhere along the way. But you can see what they were doing. They get to the Red Queen and a few of the commandos get stuck in a hallway. Then they get picked off one by a deadly laser beam. This is probably the best scene in the movie. It may not be entirely convincing, but these laser dicing effects are pretty cool. Odd that it isn't a zombie scene though, or even in the first game I believe. It ends with the leader of the commandos getting sliced into cubes. Yeah, that's cool. They shut down the Red Queen, which disables all the safety protocols. Then we finally get some zombies. And it's kind of a letdown. I mean, the zombies look okay, except for a few with digital makeup, and the one that clearly has fire-resistant gel in his hair, but they aren't anything special. The rest of the movie just feels really generic. Watching the movie, I couldn't help but feel I've already seen this before, and that's because I have. They literally recreate shots from the Romero zombie movies. There's one last cool scene where Alice has to fight zombie dogs. I know these things are in the game, but I don't remember if there was a reason for them being skinless. Here you see that they chewed their way out of their cages and just got shredded by the metal. This movie is really light on the gore, so it was refreshing to see something gross. Alice ends up shooting a bunch of them, then finishing off the last one with this slow motion kick. Ooh, yeah, that is so cool. And yeah, there's not much else to talk about after that. It's the same old, same old. Eventually, a licker shows up, and they have a harder time trying to kill it than Kieran did when we played Resident Evil 2.
Oh no! Oh yeah, let's pop it in his mouth.
Yes! I wanted to see this.
All right.
Is it timed?
The zombie scenes are kind of weak and strangely bloodless. The story isn't that interesting, and the characters aren't engaging at all. They're played by good actors, but I'm guessing the material didn't give them a lot to work with. One positive thing I will say about the film is the music is pretty awesome. It was scored by Marco Beltrami, who's known for the Scream trilogy. He also got a little help from Marilyn Manson. Overall, I think the movie's okay. It's fun, it's entertaining, and if I would have seen it in the theater in 2002, I would have definitely enjoyed it. In the same way I enjoyed Alien Resurrection, but, you know, it must have done something right because it helped kickstart the trend of zombie movies in the 2000s. It was around the same time as 28 Days Later, and then you had all these zombie films coming after, and then Romero, the master of all, came back with Land of the Dead. But I'd like to know, what do the fans think? Do you think that this movie is an accurate representation of the games? Let me know in the comments, and I'll let a certain Resident Evil expert take it from here.
Hey everybody, it's me, Kieran. I think I'm the only one at Cinemassacre here who's actually played every single Resident Evil game, even the weird ones and the shitty ones and the offshoots. So I'm here to talk about the movie. So when they first announced the movie, I was 14, and I flipped a shit. I knew it wasn't going to be completely accurate to the video games, because movies always take certain liberties with the source material. If you look at X-Men 1, which had come out like a few years before that, but I didn't give a shit. It was Resident Evil was getting a movie, and that's all I cared about. The thing that I really like about this movie is that it feels like it could be going on in the game's universe. As if this is a side story or some sort of thing that's happening at the same time as the games. Somewhere in between the first and second, I can imagine that this takes place in Resident Evil's universe. I like that it had all original characters. It didn't have any of the characters from the games because it wouldn't step on anything that the games had already established, at least until the sequels came out and just shit on every single thing that the first movie and all the games had done. I think that the movie's central location, the Hive, makes total sense within the scope of the Resident Evil universe. Resident Evil 1, the mansion had a big underground lab. Resident Evil 2, there was a giant underground facility that was beneath Raccoon City itself. I mean, it's a common thing. And on top of that, this movie actually had a whole bunch of the common Resident Evil tropes, like the countdown clock that's constantly ticking throughout the movie, and a train escape that is right out of Resident Evil 2. Overall, the movie also kept a decent Resident Evil feel to it, in my opinion. The room filled with stasis pods, the cold, disheveled laboratories, and the silent corridors with danger lurking all over. That said, there are a couple things about the movie that are kind of fucked, in my opinion. For one thing, the appearance of lickers in the movie is a little bit weird, because lickers were created with the G virus and not the T virus, but the movie specifically says that the lickers are early experiment created by injecting T-virus into living tissue. To be more accurate, they could have either had the Chimera or the Hunters, which were featured in Resident Evil 1 and are T-virus mutations. But I think what they were going for is that the Licker was more recognizable than either of those two monsters. At this point, the newest game was Code Veronica, and up until this, Resident Evil 2 was by far the most popular game in the series. I think more people played it, and more people recognized the Licker than any of these other monsters. So that's what they were going for. I can get past that, it's whatever. So at the end of the movie, the main bad guy is a super Licker, which is kind of stupid. I think those were in later games, like Resident Evil 5 had kind of different looking Lickers and stuff, but I just felt like it was kind of a letdown. Like the Licker eats one dude and turns into a giant monster. It was kind of lame. I would have liked to see maybe a failed version of Tyrant, because if this game is taking place somewhere in between Resident Evil 1 and 2, there were failed versions of the Tyrant from Resident Evil 1 that, were never seen or were in other games. So that would be kind of cool if they did it, but again, I can kind of get past that too. At the end of the movie, they allude that the character Matt, who is mutating, is going to become the Nemesis. And I thought this was awesome, because they never explain who the Nemesis was in the game. I remember when it first came out, I thought it was going to be Chris Redfield. I thought maybe Umbrella captured Chris Redfield and changed him into the Nemesis, and that's why he's hunting down other members, but they never went with that. And Chris Redfield came back in Code Veronica. But I thought it was really cool because I thought it was a way that they were branching this movie to the game's universe and saying, hey, this is happening at the same time this is happening. But it ended up being more as a way to set up sequels than it was to branch the games together. And that's where I was a bit disappointed with it. Also, the laser scene, while it was never featured in games before this movie came out, it was put into Resident Evil 4, and it was a bit more ridiculous in Resident Evil 4. And this is where, you see that the movie actually was affecting the games a bit, like it was impacting them a bit. But then that became a bit of a problem because it just seemed like the sequels that got stupider and stupider were affecting the games way too much, because all the games after 4 and before 7, so 5 and 6, and then all the offshoots, just got dumber and dumber. And that's when I kind of fell out of it and, got back into it after 7. But other than that, I think the first movie is still a good movie. I enjoy watching it. It's got that Paul W.S. Anderson feel to it. I think it's a decent side story in Resident Evil. I say just stay the fuck away from all of the sequels because they're fucking terrible. They're stupid, and for some reason I went and saw every single one in theaters. So that's how I feel about the movie, and I'm sure there are many other fans that agree with me.
The Resident Evil movies suck.